War. Humanity's least family-friendly hobby, but somehow we're pretty good at it. And along the way, we've managed to remodel the planet like a bloody DIY project. From blades to ballistic missiles, every conflict has left its mark on the map. If even one war had gone differently, you might be living under a different flag, a different anthem, maybe even ordering your matcha latte in a different language. Let's kick off with number 25, Alexander the Great. It's all in the name. Great general, brilliant strategist, terrible at modesty. And if the stories are true, up for anything in his personal life. His conquests, not those kinds, changed the world forever. He basically speedran the battlefield. By 30, he'd already beaten the biggest empire on Earth, the Persians. Like a student on a gap year, he even reached the Indus River. His empire had stretched from little old Macedonia all the way across the known world. Greece? Egypt? Got it. He got all the way down to India. Everyone on ancient 30 under 30 lists despised him. But even greatness has an expiration date. By 32, he was Alexander the Dead. Assassin? Battlefield injury? Nope, a fever. He conquered empires, but not a cold. But his legacy lives on. Alexander built cities like a man afraid of being forgotten. Dozens of them stamped with his name. Alexandria in Egypt got the headline act, but Herat and Kandahar are still standing. Proof he didn't just conquer, he branded. His empires didn't just move borders, it rewired them. The line between Europe and Asia still has his fingerprints all over them. Turkey, the Balkans, the Middle East, all tracing the rough outline of a map one man drew with a very bloody sword. But his biggest achievement? Colin Farrell playing a slightly Irish version of him. And just when the world thought it had recovered from one megalomaniac with a sword, another showed up. With horses. Lots of them. Number 24. Think of conquering empires. What do you see? A bunch of ragtag herders? Well, the Mongol invasion forged the biggest contiguous empire in history. It stretched from the Pacific all the way to the Danube River in Eastern Europe. They crushed dynasties, remade kingdoms, and accidentally built the foundation for several modern countries while doing it. Not bad for a bunch of guys looking after yaks. Charismatic leader and weird beard owner Genghis Khan unified the Mongol tribes. He conquered China and Central Asia. Then it was time to take the band on tour. But how did they take over every empire they saw? Khan had his dogs of war. 4 lieutenants who treated strategy like an art form. 2, the Mongols had lighter, faster, and deadlier bows. 3, Khan was so terrifying that half his enemies surrendered on sight. Maybe I'll rethink that beard comment. Khan collected empires like baseball cards. Khwarezmian Empire withered. Baghdad and Samarkand wiped out. New areas were united. Without Khan, Russia might have stayed a bunch of towns arguing about who gets to be in charge. And in China, the Yuan dynasty took over. Proof that under new management isn't necessarily a good thing. But the maps don't tell the whole story. The Mongols were brutal, like delete an entire country brutal. They killed 25% of all Hungarians. 16 million men today, 0.5% of the world's male population, are directly related to Khan. It says a lot about his management style. Probably should move on from that. Asian empires expanding into Europe seemed to be a trend though. Number 23, the Ottomans came. They saw and they dipped. Constantinople was sacked in 1453, and the world hit F5. One empire crashed, another logged in. The Ottomans didn't waste time. They marched into Europe straight up to the gates of Vienna before anyone could say, "Who are these guys?" The empire spread far. Algiers, Budapest, Mecca, and Baghdad. The Ottomans had frequent flyer miles before planes existed, and today, their legacy still remains. Grand mosques, palaces, and architectural flexes scattered across their former provinces. Empires might fall, but the real estate stays. But like all groups, the Ottoman one fell apart. Internal strife, rebellions, and nationalism tore it to pieces. Then World War I came along and messed things up. For everyone, really. Nationalism spread through the Balkans. Greeks, Serbs, Bulgarians, everyone wanting their own flag and anthem. The Ottoman Empire was suddenly out of its depth. Turkish nationalism fired up. What followed wasn't diplomacy. It was a regional bar fight. Wars broke out, populations were wiped out or expelled. Armenians, Kurds, and Greeks all paid the price. Sure, Turkey, Greece, and the Balkans experienced some identity crisis issues later, but I'll get to that soon. And if things weren't complicated enough in the West, the Ottomans decided to reshape the map in the East, too. Number 22, the Ottoman-Safavid Wars were a straight-up battle between Sunni and Shia territories, a holy war that was anything but holy. It ended in 1639, but the borders they drew are still around today, if it ain't broke and all that. The reason for the bloodshed? Iraq and the Caucasus. One problem, though. Islamic law wasn't down on Muslim-on-Muslim warfare. Time to pack up the swords. But there was a get-out. Enforcing religious laws? Get your fight on. So, in the grand tradition of rulers desperate for a fight, Ottoman Sultan Selim I just called Safavid Shah Ismail a heretic, which, as far as insults go, isn't the worst. The Ottomans charged into Mesopotamia and the Caucasus. Total coincidence, of course. Exactly where Selim wanted to go anyway. Funny how divine missions always seem to line up with personal interests. There were 4 wars in total. Apparently one wasn't enough. The Ottomans won the first 2 easily, scooping up Iraq and the Caucasus. Round 3 belonged to the Safavids, who snatched it back. Who doesn't love a good underdog story? By the end of the 4th war in 1639, everyone was bored out of their minds. They signed the Treaty of Kasr-i-Shirin, the fine whatever of diplomacy deals. It ended the fighting and drew the Iran-Turkey border almost exactly as it stands today. It's one of the region's oldest borders. Meanwhile, across the continent, the English were having their own family drama, Game of Thrones style. Number 21. The War of Roses. Sounds romantic, but it was really England's messiest divorce. 2 royal families, 1 crown, 0 therapy. It marked the end of the Middle Ages and the start of England acting like a proper empire. Okay, it didn't directly redraw maps, but it created an empire that would. In the mid-1400s, King Henry VI of England was unwell. Royal bloodlines had gotten a little too close. Turns out, centuries of marrying cousins and hoarding power isn't great for mental health. When Henry completely lost it in 1453, aristocrats installed the Duke of York, Richard, as protector of the realm. But in 1455, Henry did a quick turnabout, told Richard, "I'm good, bro," and reclaimed authority. And York said, "Nuh-uh." So now the houses of Lancaster and York had a problem. They both wanted the English throne. Normally, there would be a simple solution. Who descended from the king? The problem, they both did, from Edward III. So they got their battle on for 30 years. Eventually, Henry Tudor, later Henry VII, won. To end the royal cage match, Henry married Elizabeth of York. The move united the warring families. It didn't hurt that she was a total knockout, too. Seriously, records of the time describe her as a great beauty. Win-win for Henry. Why the War of Roses, though? York's badge was a white rose. Lancaster's was red. Also, it's a better name than bloody English infighting. England was now unified and ready to join the upcoming colonial age. So far, we've had Alexander speedrunning empire building, the Mongols turning conquest into a lifestyle, and the English arguing over flowers. If you like these map dives, make sure to hit that subscribe button, because someone needs to justify my 2 a.m. Google Earth binges. Ready to keep the War World Tour rolling? Trust me, the top 3 are the heavy hitters, the conflicts that didn't just change maps, they rewrote them. Number 20. One conquest. Almost an entire continent. Catholic, Spanish-speaking, and not so indigenous anymore. Few countries have ever reshaped a continent like Spain did to Latin America. Culture, language, religion, all stamped with a little Iberian flair. But people forget Spain once owned most of North America, too. Yeah, before the Stars and Stripes, it was paella and conquistadors. Central and South America were already home to massive empires. The Incas ruled Peru. The Aztecs had Mexico. Then the conquistadors arrived and treated the place like a demolition project. And the Spanish brought gifts. Wars, forced labor, every European disease imaginable. Heard of smallpox? No? Well, now you have. Today, indigenous people make up only about 8% of Latin America's population, but a much larger share of its poorest. Everyone else, a mix of white, black, and everything in between. Centuries of empire make for complicated family trees. The Treaty of Tordesillas divided Latin America between Portugal and Spain, without asking anyone living there, of course. That line still holds. Brazil speaks Portuguese. Everyone else speaks Spanish. Up north, Spain wasn't lacking either. Until 1800, it owned almost all of the western, southwestern, and central US. Spain was playing continental monopoly. But that didn't last. Future wars took care of that. But the legacy stuck. Spanish names, Spanish language, and a reminder that half the US once answered to Madrid. Spain rewrote the map of the Americas, and centuries later, Europe looked at Africa and thought, hey, we could do that too. Number 19. The Scramble for Africa. The Second Industrial Revolution was the gift that kept on giving. Transportation, tech, climate change, black lung, and 7 European countries trying to carve up Africa like it was a Thanksgiving turkey. Let me explain. For most of Europe's history with Africa, the relationship was simple. Trade on the coast, sail home, brag about it later. No one wanted to go inland. Too humid, too much malaria, too much dying. But the Second Industrial Revolution changed that. Suddenly, pushing into Africa wasn't so hard. Communication got faster, travel got easier, and instead of dying every time a mosquito gave you the side eye, you could just pop a pill. And then there were the raw materials. In 1870, Europeans controlled 10% of Africa. By 1914, almost 90%. Not all European countries. Norway was minding its own business, probably skiing. But the UK, France, Belgium, Spain, Italy, Portugal, and Germany all wanted their piece. What could go wrong? In 1885, they signed a deal to make the scramble for Africa less messy. For colonizers, that is. For the colonized, it was still a horror show. It just had paperwork now. Colonization and later decolonization gave Africa borders and problems that still remain today. Tribes were separated. Kingdoms were decimated. When it came time for Europe to pack up, they drew lines in the sand. Literally, the result looked like a toddler was let loose with a crayon. Those lines are Africa's borders today. Clean on paper, chaos in reality. As Europe divided Africa with pens and paperwork, another colony decided it preferred scissors and cut ties entirely. The map changed drastically again. Roll on the next revolution. Number 18. The first colony to free itself also became the first democratic republic since ancient times. The American Revolution didn't just change a border, it changed Western politics. You know the story. Britain taxed tea, the colonists didn't like it, they threw it in the harbor. Britain sent men in white wigs and red coats to crush them. It didn't work out so well. Like some upcoming conflicts, the American Revolution mattered because of what it represented. A scrappy, disorganized colony up against the British Empire. And somehow it won. No one saw it coming. It was the Rebel Alliance versus the Galactic Empire, minus Jedi, plus dysentery. The French, of course, didn't want to miss the revolution trend. They'd start their own soon enough. The American Revolution became legend. Taught in schools worldwide, remixed on Broadway. History's easier to listen to when it's wrapped. The revolution created the United States, a brand new country built on freedom, ambition, and mild hypocrisy. It pushed west, expanding coast to coast, and ironically, it ended up building its own kind of empire, especially over Latin America. Number 17. The Haitian Revolution was a big deal. The first country founded by former slaves. But in true European fashion, the fine print of independence helped ruin Haiti for centuries to come. On the eve of the revolt, enslaved Africans outnumbered Europeans more than 15-1. The math alone meant this wasn't going to end well. In May of 1791, France granted citizenship to wealthy affranchis, people of mixed descent. The Europeans on the island reacted like kids told to share their toys. They ignored it. That tantrum lit the fuse. Enslaved Africans saw their moment and kicked off. France panicked. In 1793, they sent a commissioner to calm things down. His solution? end slavery entirely. A few years later, Toussaint Louverture took control of the island. He promised loyalty to France, then said psych, and kept the power anyway. Then Napoleon said bonjour. He sent his brother-in-law, General Leclerc, to restore order. Leclerc and Louverture agreed to a truce. France immediately arrested and executed him. Reverse psych. And that went down well with Louverture's generals. France reinstated slavery, and the generals had enough. They threw hands. By 1804, they won, and Haiti was born. Europe reacted with horror. Freedom for former slaves? Human rights? Can you imagine? 2 decades later, France recognized Haiti's independence in exchange for 100 million francs. Nothing says congratulations on escaping slavery like a bill you can never pay. The debt crippled Haiti for generations. Still, the Caribbean colony was free, the first one to pull it off, and the neighbors noticed, especially the ones where slaves outnumbered masters and the math was starting to look promising. The age of revolts had begun. The empires just didn't know it yet. But let's stick with Napoleon for now. Number 16. Because of a short king, a 1,000-year-old empire would be toppled. Europe and the US would never look the same. Napoleon Bonaparte wasn't down with the French Revolution business. He skipped the whole beheading part and put himself in charge. Then he went to war with pretty much everyone in Europe, sometimes all at once. It's like he saw the continent as his vision board. And like every good European war, it didn't stay local. The chaos spilled into the colonies. After his failed attempt to crush Haiti's revolution, Napoleon realized French Louisiana was more attractive. He could conquer Europe, but not mosquitoes and heat. So he signed off on the Louisiana Purchase in 1803, which literally doubled the size of the US. The endless fighting in Europe killed the Holy Roman Empire. 1,000 years gone overnight. It shattered into smaller states, some later rebranded as Germany. Napoleon also swept through Italy, pulling the little states on Europe's boot under his platform heel. The wars even spawned the Kingdom of the Netherlands. It later lost Belgium in a very polite breakup. Most modern European countries exist because Napoleon couldn't sit still. Then came Russia. He invaded, and it went exactly how Russian invasions always go. Badly. The Treaty of Vienna ended the wars in 1815. Europe hit reset and redrew its borders so no one country could get too powerful again. It was like putting toddlers in separate corners and hoping they'd behave. And it worked. For a while. Okay, we've watched Spain remodel 2 continents, Europe carve up a 3rd, and the Americans start a freedom trend. And the world map's not done getting rearranged yet. There's still a lot of messy conflicts to cover. Number 15. In the 1800s, Latin America had enough. It started pushing back. One by one, colonies revolted against Spain and Portugal. That's why we have Brazil, Argentina, and Colombia today. One war set off another. Napoleon forced Spain's King Charles IV to quit, sparking the Peninsular War. While Spain fought for its own freedom, its colonies took the hint. They'd seen the French and American revolutions, and they had FOMO. It was time to get in on the Revolution Act. One man led the charge, Simón Bolívar. He couldn't get enough of independence. The guy made it his whole identity. Bolívar freed the viceroyalty of New Granada, covering parts of Colombia, Ecuador, Panama, and his homeland, Venezuela. Still not satisfied, he went south in 1825 and freed Bolivia, too. The locals were so impressed, they named the country after him. That's how you know you've made an impression. Unfortunately, Bolívar's dream didn't last. He wanted the new nations to stay united. One big don't invade us family to keep Spain away. From 1819 to 1831, they tried. Gran Colombia was born. It was a superstate spanning Colombia, Venezuela, Ecuador, Panama, and bits of Peru, Guyana, and Brazil. But after Bolívar's death in 1830, it fell apart fast. Turns out, keeping independence is harder than winning it. By then, Spain's empire was toast, and stepping into the power vacuum came England. Not that England did everything right either, but before I take that on... Number 14. The Unification of Germany is a masterclass in if at first you don't succeed, try again. German-speaking duchies and states existed for centuries, but they weren't really unified. The Holy Roman Empire was the group chat of Europe. Too many members, no admin, and nothing ever got done. By the 1800s, Prussia and Austria-Hungary were the regional heavyweights, and they loved drama. They fought over the other German-speaking states like divorced parents splitting custody. In 1815, the Congress of Vienna created the German Confederation, 39 states under Austrian leadership. Prussia wasn't exactly happy, so it made its own version in 1834. But there was one name not on the guest list: Austria. The idea of German unification had been floating around, but the question was Lesser Germany or Greater Germany? The latter included Austria-Hungary. Otto von Bismarck, Prussia's prime minister, wasn't a fan at all. Why? Austria was too diverse. Seriously, too many Slavs, Magyars, and everyone else who didn't fit the whole Germany for Germans vibe Bismarck was going for. Prussia fought Austria and won. The North German Confederation was formed, but Bismarck still needed the southern states on board. His solution? Start a war with France. Stay with me here. The plan worked. France got invaded, nationalism exploded, and the southern states joined the north. Austria-Hungary was left outside, looking in. The new Germany wasn't small either. It swallowed big chunks of what's now northern Poland, a slice of France, and even a little of Russia. Don't worry, they'll lose it all later. Von Bismarck became the first chancellor of Germany, a kind of fascist-y Germany that was super focused on ethnic homogeneity. Thankfully, that would never happen again, until later in this video. Speaking of unifications, number 13. For most of its history, Italy wasn't a country. It was a mess of kingdoms, duchies, and city-states, half of them run by someone else. Then came 1861. Unification was suddenly in style. Why? Napoleon, mostly. He showed up, broke everything, then bailed. For centuries, some Italian states tried calling themselves republics. Then the middle class grew, and for the first time, they actually got a say in government. Progress, sort of. In 1815, the French were out. Italy was still a jigsaw puzzle with pieces that didn't fit. Austria ran the north, the Bourbons ran the south, and nobody was happy. The Italians agreed on one thing. They wanted change. They just couldn't agree on what kind. Classic Italy. In 1831, Giuseppe Mazzini founded Young Italy. The goal? A united Republican Italy. It might sound like a boy band, but the mission was serious. Others had different ideas. Some wanted the Pope in charge. Others backed the House of Savoy, which, to be fair, still sounds like a luxury department store, not a royal family. Austria was kicked out of the north. Giuseppe Garibaldi took care of the south, defeating the Bourbons and handing Italy the kingdom of the Two Sicilies. By 1861, most of Italy was finally united. Venetia and Papal Rome joined the gang in 1870. The famous boot-shaped country was complete, and it's still the only one school kids can find on a map without cheating. While Italy was finally getting its act together, the US was busy taking everyone else's land. Number 12. The Mexican-American War. This 2-year conflict gave the US Texas and most of its southwestern states. It also gave Americans their first cultural import, tacos. So, mixed legacy, I guess. Back in the 1830s, Mexico and the US were two young nations riding their independence highs, and they immediately started fighting over each other's land. American settlers in Texas declared independence in 1836. Mexico wasn't having it. Polk annexed Texas in 1845 anyway. Why ask when you can just take it? The border was still up for debate, but Polk had a brilliant idea. He sent diplomat John Slidell to Mexico City to smooth things over. He was gonna drop $30 million for California and New Mexico, since he was in the area too. That didn't go down so well. Mexican President Jose Herrera refused to meet Slidell, so Polk, ever the diplomat, sent troops south of the border. Then he asked Congress to declare war. I'm no politician, but that doesn't seem like the correct order of events. One look at the map tells you how that went. The US walked away with half a continent. Mexico walked away with trauma. It also put the US on top in North America. A position it still holds, I think, unless you're watching this in 2200, in which case, shout out to our new robot overlords. Please, like and subscribe. Speaking of aggressive takeovers, number 11, the Sino-Japanese Wars overlapped with a little side project you may have heard of, World War II. And if you thought Japan was aggressive with Europe, just wait until you see what it did to its neighbors. Before the First War in 1894, China's strength had been weakened by constant foreign interference and the famous spheres of influence. Still, it had Korea, which it treated less like an ally and more like a clingy dependent. Japan had other plans. It wanted Korea to open up and, maybe not take orders from Beijing anymore. That boiled over into war in 1894, with Korea stuck in the middle like the world's most awkward third wheel. Everyone was expecting a China win, but Japan had a surprise, a heavily militarized, guess who's modern now kind of surprise. Within a year, they had swatted China's massive army aside like it was nothing. The war ended with China forced to recognize Korea's independence, hand over Taiwan and the Liaodong Peninsula. Oh, and they also had to pay Japan a mountain of cash. It was the full humiliation package. Russia was side-eyeing this new Japanese aggressiveness, Japan's new attitude. No one likes an angry neighbor, especially one packing warships. So, with France and Germany backing them up, they politely bullied Japan into giving back the Liaodong Peninsula. That never sat right with Japan. So, in 1931, they staged a false flag attack, a classic move. That gave them a reason to invade Manchuria. The Japanese advanced fast. Too fast. Then World War II went global. Suddenly they were fighting everywhere. Not exactly a great long-term strategy. At the end of the war, Japan pulled out of China and handed Taiwan back to the Republic of China. Then the communists took over. Taiwan politely RSVP'd no thanks to the invite, and if you want to learn more about China and Taiwan's toxic relationship, stick around until the end. We've seen colonies rebel, countries finally figure out what shape they want to be, and superpowers learn that diplomacy usually means invasion. And now we've hit the top 10. Guess the winner in the comments, or the loser, depending on how you look at it. Number 10. The Spanish-American War burned from April to August of 1898. It officially ended Spain's run as the Western Hemisphere's boss and handed the keys to the United States. It all kicked off with Cuba's fight for independence. Spain responded with concentration camps. 400,000 Cubans locked up. Subtlety clearly wasn't a Spanish thing. US newspapers had a field day. Front-page horror stories, outrage, and plenty of moral grandstanding, which coincidentally sells really well. Americans didn't love the idea of a foreign empire flexing just 90 miles off the coast of Florida. Things went up a notch when the USS Maine exploded in Havana Harbor. Probably an accident, but no one cares about evidence when there's a war to be fought. And pretty soon, the countries went to war. The US steamrolled Spain. In the peace deal, Spain coughed up Puerto Rico, Guam, and Cuba, which became a US protectorate. Suddenly, the United States had overseas territories, and the realization hit fast. Empires weren't just for Europeans anymore. America also bought the Philippines for $20 million. Who doesn't love a shopping spree after a fight? However, Filipinos would later say screw that and fight their own war for independence. But that's another war for another time. Since the US was on an imperialist type of roll, it also annexed Hawaii, and the US got started on its path to domination in the Western Hemisphere. Spain was out, America was in, and Europe busy prepping its next big drama. Number 9. The Balkan Wars. In 1912, Greece, Serbia, and Bulgaria had finally shaken off the Ottomans, but there were still a few pieces still up for grabs. Kosovo, Crete, northeast Greece, and Macedonia. So, in a rare moment of Balkan teamwork, they teamed up with Montenegro and kicked the Ottomans out for good. Victory all around. Champagne, cheers, flags waving. Then came the awkward part, deciding who got what. So, they immediately started fighting each other. Greece and Serbia teamed up against Bulgaria and won. Serbia got Kosovo, Greece took southern Macedonia, Albania said, you know what, I'll go solo, and became its own country. But Austria-Hungary wasn't loving Serbia's glow-up. The empire got major main character syndrome and started plotting. Enter Gavrilo Princip, a Serbian nationalist with bad aim and worse timing. He popped Archduke Franz Ferdinand. Austria-Hungary saw its opening and declared war on Serbia. And this had a bit of a domino effect. Number 8. After World War I, Europe looked like someone hit shuffle on the map. Empires collapsed. New countries popped up. The Ottoman Empire was dismantled. Britain and France stripped its carcass with super carefully drawn borders, of course. France got modern-day Lebanon and Syria. Britain got Iraq, Jordan, and Israel. And that was the end of conflict in the region forever and always. Wait a second. The Austro-Hungarian Empire ended up on the losing team. Its regions took one look at the chaos and said, yeah, we're out. That meant Hungary, Czechoslovakia, and Yugoslavia all went solo. Romania got an upgrade. Poland respawned as an independent country, stitched together from bits of Germany, Austria-Hungary, and Russia, a real geopolitical Frankenstein. And Russia, busy dealing with that small hiccup called the Communist Revolution. While it was distracted, Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania made a break for it, but not for long. Basically, a huge chunk of current European and Middle Eastern borders were formed because of World War I. But then it was time for the sequel, and that was bigger, louder, and a whole lot messier. Number 7. In 1938, Europe thought it could make Hitler chill by giving him part of Czechoslovakia. In 1939, the Soviet Union signed a "we're totally not going to invade each other" pact with Germany. Both of those moves worked out great. For about a year, it all seemed fine, unless you lived in a country near them. In September of 1939, Hitler invaded Western Poland. 2 weeks later, the Soviets took the east. A rough month to be Polish. Then the Soviets turned their attention north. They staged free elections in the Baltic states, where voters could choose between the Soviet candidate and the other Soviet candidate. Unsurprisingly, 95% voted yes, right after the rest were executed. They also took a small part of Finland, for good measure. In a shocking twist no one saw coming, Germany invaded the USSR. So the Soviets switched sides mid-war. By 1945, the Allies were too exhausted to argue, and the USSR got to keep most of the land it had liberated. Poland was shuffled west, gaining land from Germany. Good news. But it lost chunks to the Soviet Union. Bad news. The Baltic states stayed under Soviet control for the next 40 years, and with eastern Romania and the leftovers of northern East Prussia, the USSR came out bigger than ever. Nothing like a world war to expand your real estate portfolio. And the stage was set for the USSR's communist sphere of influence versus the West. But before I get to the Cold War's proxy wars, number 6. In yet another edition of The British Draw Borders and Everyone Else Has to Pay for It Forever, I give you India and Pakistan. India had been pushing for independence for over a century, but after World War II, Britain was done. Too many colonies, not enough energy. Time to pack the empire and head home. One problem with that, though. India wasn't exactly unified. Hindus, Muslims, and Sikhs all wanted different versions of the new country, and the arguments dragged on until Muslim League leader Muhammad Ali Jinnah basically rage quit and created Pakistan mid-argument. The British, realizing disaster was coming, split the region in 1947. Hindu-majority India and Muslim-majority Pakistan. Sounds simple, like slicing a cake, if the cake was country-shaped and on fire. Pakistan was split into East and West, what later became Bangladesh, and millions suddenly found themselves on the wrong side of the border. It was the largest, most chaotic population swap in history. Even the semi-independent states had to choose sides, India or Pakistan. Most did. Kashmir didn't, and almost 70 years later, it's still the world's longest running, its complicated status. So far, we've seen empires fall, borders break, and Britain leave a trail of paperwork and trauma wherever it went. And somehow, the world's biggest mess was still coming. Ready for the top 5 conflicts that changed the world map? Number 5. The Korean War split the peninsula in two. One side became one of the richest, most high-tech nations on Earth. The other, whatever Kim Jong-un is doing to North Korea. One country and culture has been split for so long, it's basically a social experiment now. North and South Koreans don't just have different accents, they have different worlds. K-beauty versus state-mandated haircuts. K-pop versus Kim Jong-un's greatest hits of, well, I'll get back to you on that one. The Korean War was one of the Cold War's many proxy wars. When the US and USSR couldn't fight each other directly, they just used other countries like chess pieces. Except everyone kept flipping the board. Then, in June of 1950, North Korea decided sharing was overrated. It invaded the South with Soviet approval. The US jumped in to defend its bro. Armies were pushed up and down the peninsula so many times, it looked like someone was buffering the war. The UN stepped in, told everyone to play nice. Oh, and they also sent troops. North Korea and its Soviet backers were pushed north again. After 3 million deaths, the countries agreed to be divided at the 38th parallel. You might be thinking, how did this change the map? Well, Korea was only divided in 1945, and that split was supposed to be temporary. Supposed to be. But the Korean War made it permanent. 2 countries, 2 political systems, 2 entirely different realities. One side built microchips and K-pop, the other built missiles and murals. The Korean peninsula was divided, new borders unlocked, and America? It was looking for its next intervention. Number 4. After World War II, Vietnamese nationalist Ho Chi Minh declared independence. Vietnam was free for like 5 minutes. The country got sliced at the 17th parallel, north and south, like a divorce where both sides kept the house. The north was communist, disciplined, and poor. The South is technically democratic, actually just another dictatorship with better PR. The US was fine with that, naturally. Minh wasn't thrilled with this setup. The North armed the Viet Cong, Southern communists waging guerrilla war. Then, for extra credit, North Vietnam invaded Laos in 58 and 59. Hey, why ruin one country when you can ruin 2? The US started to panic. North Vietnam could spread communism through Asia. At that time, stopping communism was basically America's personality trait. So, the US backed South Vietnam. The North got help from the Soviet Union and China, meaning America and the USSR would fight without technically fighting. Again, everyone expected an easy US win. Big army, big tech, big ego. But the North knew the terrain. The jungles, the tunnels, the humidity. They used guerrilla tactics. No massive battlefields, no clean victories. Just ambushes, traps, and a slow, sweaty nightmare. The US pulled out in 1973. Within 2 years, Saigon fell. It was renamed Ho Chi Minh City, just in case anyone was confused about who won. Vietnam was united under a communist government. America had spent 2 decades, 58,000 lives, and billions of dollars to stop that from happening. Nailed it. We've hit the top 3. The big ones. The "this is why your atlas looks different every decade" tier. Number 3, the collapse of the Soviet Union. The Soviet Union was a global heavyweight from 1922 to 1991, but by the end, things were pretty shaky. Its massive military budget was bleeding it dry, and holding on to all those satellite states like trying to keep a dozen teenagers from moving out at once, especially when they started getting dangerous ideas like freedom and independence. Then came Mikhail Gorbachev, the guy who thought, what if we just eased up a little? He loosened the economy, rolled back the jail every journalist policy, and let people speak their minds. Bold move. Then came 1989. The Berlin Wall fell, and the game was up. Nationalist movements in the Baltics, Ukraine, Georgia, and beyond cranked the volume to 11. By 1991, one of the most powerful empires on Earth quietly disassembled itself. The Soviet Union split into 15 new countries. It was the geopolitical equivalent of a messy breakup. Everyone got a piece of the map, but no one was happy. The Soviet Union's collapse redrew half of the world map, but it wasn't the only country coming apart at the seams. A little further south, another federation was about to learn that staying together for the kids doesn't always work. Number 2. This is the biggest family breakup you've ever heard of. There was a guy named Josip Broz Tito, resistor of Yugoslavia's Axis occupation and eventual leader of the Communist Party and country. He led the country for 35 years, and rulers who do that can become just a little fascisty. Tito's legacy is pretty complicated. He ran a tight ship that boosted the Yugoslav economy and gave most people a decent standard of living. But groups like the Albanians, not so lucky, especially if they opposed him. Still, he pulled off something remarkable. He kept Yugoslavia neutral during the Cold War, a communist party that didn't side with Stalin. And Stalin took that personally. He tried to have Tito assassinated multiple times. Tito eventually sent him a note that read, "Stop sending people to kill me. We've already captured 5 of them. If you don't stop, I'll send one to Moscow, and I won't need to send another." Threatening someone's life and shading the quality of their assassins. Gold. But the cracks were soon showing. Bosnia was mostly Muslim, Croatia mostly Catholic, Serbia mostly Orthodox. It was like the most awkward family dinner ever. Keeping the Balkans glued together was an Olympic-level challenge. When Tito died in 1980, the glue went with him. Yugoslavia's unity got fragile. By 1991, Slovenia and Croatia said, "We're out." Serbia didn't take it well. They claimed they were just protecting Serb minorities in Croatia and Bosnia, which is history's favorite way of saying, "We're invading you now." Eventually, North Macedonia, Bosnia and Herzegovina, and Serbia went their own separate ways as well. Montenegro up and left Serbia in 2006. The modern Balkans emerged from the wreckage, a map stitched together with the seams still showing. We've made it to the top spot. The biggest map changer of the modern era. The one that didn't just redraw borders, it set the whole world on fire. Number 1, the Iraq War and the aftermath. Once again, invading a country to force democracy down its throat went about as well as last time. Not that anyone learned anything. The 2003 invasion of Iraq was launched because of 9/11. Totally unrelated, but the US insisted Saddam Hussein was hiding weapons of mass destruction. He wasn't. So America went off to war in the oil fields. Hussein's regime fell fast, but the US stuck around until 2011. Long enough to turn mission accomplished into a punchline. The global war on terror was declared over, but then ISIS showed up like an unwanted party guest who also brought explosives. The Iraq War didn't change borders. It deleted them. Suddenly, there were blank spaces where countries used to be. The whole region became a choose-your-own-adventure for armed groups, ISIS, militias, and anyone else with a flag and an AK-47. The aftermath of the Iraq War was pure instability. The Syrian civil war erupted. The Taliban made the fastest comeback in history over in Afghanistan, and militant groups started collecting territory like NFTs, useless, volatile, and somehow still valuable to someone. The result wasn't a new map, it was a puzzle with half the pieces missing. Maps may change, but humanity's favorite hobby hasn't. Maybe one day we'll run out of borders to fight over. Thanks for joining me today. I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you want to see more videos like this, then please consider subscribing and turn on notifications. Really does make a difference. Thanks again, and I'll see you next time on MapPack.